Hi, it's me, Diane again. In the first part of my story, I've told you about how I found out my boyfriend Brett was actually my half brother when I once brought him home to introduce him to my mom, who also wasn't even my real mom. I was seriously upset with my mom and my aunt. I loved them both so much, but they've been lying to me my whole life. Imagine how hurt I must have been. Now, with the fact that my dad was also Brett's dad, of course it was wrong to keep dating him. So, one day we met on our college campus, and I told him I wanted to break up with him. It was so horrible to break his heart like that, but the truth would be much, much worse. Part of me really wanted to tell him because then I could meet my real parents, but then Brett would really suffer. Obviously, Brett didn't take the breakup well. He called me so many times and even came to my house begging to get me back. Even though he knew my mom didn't want him there, I completely avoided him, as I felt like if I saw him, I'd just want to be with him again. I ended up taking a semester off college to sort my head out. It wasn't just to avoid Brett, though. I had another reason, too. I noticed that my biological parents' company was hiring a finance intern. I discovered this when I was Googling them one day, and I realized I had to apply. Well, I got the job. I was so nervous to meet my parents. And on my very first day, my manager introduced me to my dad. I had to try and act as normal as possible, just like any other employee, but inside I was screaming, wishing that I could just tell him who I really was. A few days later, I finally met my mom. My colleague told me that sometimes she would come and bring her husband lunch, and as soon as I saw her, I started shaking. She handed my dad his lunch and gave him a peck on the cheek, and they looked so sweet together. I couldn't stop staring at her. And as she left, she glanced at me and smiled. Suddenly, I felt so emotional, as if I'd lost something that I'd never had. I ended up running to the bathroom and crying in secret. It was just so overwhelming. When my birthday rolled around, my colleagues organized a small birthday party for me at the office. My mom and dad joined us to congratulate me and even sang happy birthday to me. I kept looking at my mom and noticed there were tears in her eyes. I knew that was because my birthday was the same date that she lost me, her only child. If only she knew I was standing there right in front of her. That night when I got home, I saw that my mom and aunt had also prepared a surprise birthday for me. It made me even more emotional because I thought back over all the years. It didn't matter how busy they both were. They always threw me a party. Inside, I felt like I was going crazy. I felt so torn between emotions for both my biological and adoptive family. I don't know why, but I decided that was the right moment to tell my mom and aunt about my decision to meet my real parents. Don't worry, I'll never leave both of you. And aunt, I'll never tell them you were the kidnapper, I said. After that, both my mom and aunt were crying and thanked me for promising not to leave them, and even offered to help me get my parents back, which just made me cry too. You're probably wondering about Brett. Well, one day I was in the elevator, and all of a sudden the doors opened, and Brett was standing right there with my dad. I wanted to run away, but I had to face him. I quickly said, "Oh, hey, long time no see, Brett. I work here now. What are you doing here?" My dad looked at us confused, and I pretended not to know that the two of them were father and son. So he explained, "Diane, this is my dad. You must have known him from working together. Dad, this is my, ex-girlfriend Diane. I've mentioned her to you," he said. Then my dad complimented me and said I was a great girl at work and that he was sorry it hadn't worked out for us. Brett looked at me sadly then. I told him I had work to do and rushed off. You see, I was solely focused on revealing myself to my parents and didn't want anything to distract me, but it was going to be tough now that my dad knew I was Brett's ex. But thankfully, my aunt had found out something about Ashley that I could use. That night, my aunt came to my room and told me that she'd been researching Ashley. She was afraid that Ashley would start bothering me if she found out I was trying to get back to my family. Turns out my aunt was friends with a close friend of Ashley, the same friend who helped Ashley hire my aunt to kidnap me. So, my aunt met up with her to ask about Ashley, and she told my aunt that Ashley was married and had a daughter. As for her son, Brett, ever since he was a child, she'd just given him to his dad's family, aka my parents. So then my aunt went to Ashley's house. She spotted her going somewhere with some friends and followed her. She overheard Ashley bragging about her daughter, and then her one friend said, "Oh, Ashley, you're so lucky to have two amazing kids." But Ashley just laughed and said, "Oh, Brett, that boy is so stubborn. He's not like me at all. He must get his personality from his dad, whoever his dad might be." To be honest, till this day, I still don't know and don't even bother to know. My aunt couldn't believe what she was hearing. So she asked her friend about it, and then, yes, another shocking truth came out. My dad wasn't even Brett's dad. Back then, Ashley had slept with a few random men to try and get pregnant. Then she tricked my dad into thinking the baby was his, so he'd take responsibility and divorce his wife. However, that didn't work out. But still she kept the lie going and handed Brett over to my parents just so Brett could inherit my parents' company. OMG, Ashley was such a monster. She had fooled so many people. All I wanted was to expose her, but my aunt said we didn't have valid evidence yet. So I told my aunt I'd find a way to get some DNA samples from Brett and my dad. Firstly, I asked Brett to meet at a cafe and apologized for my ghosting behavior. I hoped he'd understand and we could be on good terms. To my complete surprise, he confessed that he was still in love with me. In my mind, I thought, I still love you too. I just wished this all would be over soon and we could get back together. As we were saying goodbye, we hugged, and I quickly grabbed a hair that had fallen on his shoulder. With my dad, I managed to find some of his facial hair on his razor in the bathroom by his office. But as I walked out, I saw there was a kid's drawing on his wall that was signed by Brett. It was nothing special, but it really made me feel bad. Clearly, my dad loved Brett so much and was so proud of him. I didn't want to ruin this for them. And sure enough, the DNA results were as expected. Brett was not my dad's son. But I was so hesitant to expose the truth. I worried that my parents' feelings for Brett would change. If they knew that I were their daughter and Brett wasn't actually related to them by blood, maybe they'd just abandon him. And with me and Brett's relationship, they might never accept it. So, in the end, we might all lose someone we love. A son to them, a lover to me, and a family to Brett. If I kept everything hidden, maybe Brett and I could get back together, and I could just see my parents that way. That would be so much better for everyone, right? And it was. Brett ended up joining the company too, and I could tell he wanted to get back together, so everything was going according to plan. But one day, Brett, my dad, and I were having lunch together, and Ashley stormed in. Right in front of us, she started yelling at my dad, saying that he was mistreating Brett by only giving him an intern's job. Brett quickly jumped up and explained that it was his own choice, but Ashley was furious. She shamelessly asked my dad to give her and her new family more money, including school fees for her daughter. She was basically blackmailing my dad. She said that because in the past she'd handed over her son to my parents out of pity, that they'd lost their child, aka me, so she thought it was okay to demand more money from him. My dad didn't reply to her, and Brett was so angry and embarrassed by his mom's behavior, he told her to stop and basically dragged her out of there. I was almost as angry as Brett. How could Ashley do this? I quickly excused myself and left my dad there all alone. By a twist of fate, I bumped into Ashley again. After work, I went to buy some sunscreen, and when it was my turn to pay, I felt someone push me from behind. Then the person said, "I'm in a rush. Let me go first. I've got my money ready." And yeah, it was none other than Ashley. And the money she was holding was probably the money from my dad. Clearly, it wasn't for her daughter's school fees then. She didn't recognize me and didn't even realize she made me drop my purse. But just before I grabbed it, she got there first. And of course, there was a photo inside of me, my mom, and my aunt from when I was just a baby. As soon as she picked it up, her face changed. She seemed to realize my aunt and suddenly realized who I was. Oh my God, I never expected that I'd have to confront Ashley in this way. Would she do something bad to me now? Hi, it's me again, Diane. In part 2 of my story, I started to work in my parents' company, but I didn't have the courage to tell them the truth that I was their long-lost daughter. Fortunately, one day, I found out that Brett, my boyfriend, wasn't my half-brother, and that his mom, Ashley, had been lying this whole time. But I didn't want to unveil the truth because I didn't want Brett to get hurt. That was until the day I bumped into Ashley. In the store, I watched as she looked at the photo of me and my mom and aunt from when I was just a baby, and the look of recognition on her face as she realized my aunt was the kidnapper she hired nearly 20 years ago. She looked at me terrified. Are you that baby? Are you also the one I saw in the company earlier this afternoon? What are you doing with Brett and his dad there? Did you know everything? She shot questions at me and didn't even wait for my response. Instead, she just started yelling at me, claiming that I was plotting to get revenge on her for stealing my life away from me. I knew it was pointless trying to explain to her, so I said nothing and watched as she ran out of the store without buying anything. The next day when I got to the company, I found out that Brett had suddenly disappeared. He hadn't come to work, and no one could get in touch with him. My dad told me that he'd gone to see his mom the night before, and after that, he hadn't come home. Oh my God, his mom! After he'd bumped into me, had she done something bad to him? I couldn't bear it. My aunt had given me Ashley's address, so I went there to find out what was going on. As soon as she opened the door, I asked her where Brett was, and she just smirked at me and said she told him I was his half-sister and that I was preparing to kick him out of my dad's family. So she said he must have run away because he was so disgusted by me. I felt so angry I wanted to scream. Ashley was ruining everything. She even said to me, "You can't fool me. It's no coincidence that you're working in your dad's company and that you've seduced Brett. You're doing all of this on purpose." Well, that just made me even angrier. I said to her, "I know Brett isn't my dad's son. I did a DNA test, and you're lucky I haven't said anything to either of them, but I will now. You better prepare yourself for the consequences." Then I left, leaving her standing there looking angry. I went straight to my parents' house to tell them before Ashley could beat me there to tell them lies. They let me in straight away and asked me what was going on and if it was about Brett. I nodded and took out all the evidence I'd prepared. This was the moment of truth. I was so nervous. I gave them the DNA results of Brett and my dad, then the baby photo of me, and then a letter my aunt had written confessing about how Ashley had hired her to kidnap me. My parents were shocked, of course, and had a lot of questions, but soon it all became clear and we all started crying. It was just so overwhelming. I even told them about what Ashley had told Brett the night before and begged them to believe me that I didn't do it all on purpose. Of course they said they believed me, and I was relieved. But the very next day, you won't believe what Ashley told them. My parents went straight to Ashley's the next day to confront her, and she couldn't deny it because there was so much evidence. But then she told my parents that she had been feeling so guilty, so she was the one who'd gotten in touch with my aunt and encouraged her to tell me the truth and then help me find my parents. After my parents told me this, I told them Ashley was lying. She was trying to make herself look like an angel when she was none other than the devil. I suggested to my parents we sue her or something, and then a few days later, Ashley got in touch with me. She'd found out where I lived, and as soon as I let her in, she begged me not to sue her. She'd obviously already received a warning letter from my parents' lawyer. She said she had a family to care for and didn't want them to know about her past. Then she promised me she'd never come near me or my family again. I was sick of her now and asked her to leave. But then she apologized again, and she really regretted everything she told Brett and that she'd gone to see him. "What? Where did you find him?" I asked. And she told me that she found him at her parents' house, where she and Brett had lived when he was little before she'd gotten married. Oh, that's right. I knew Brett loved his grandparents so much and often visited them. I hadn't even thought that that was where he could be. Then she told me that Brett hadn't disappeared because he was disgusted by me. It was because he felt so guilty about everything that had happened. She told me she'd already gone to see him and confessed because she wanted to at least be seen as an honest mother in her son's eyes. After I told Brett that he isn't your dad's son, he got so angry and shouted at me that he hated me and never wanted to see me again. It crushed me. Ashley told me and started to cry. "Please forgive me, Diane," she continued. "I've lost Brett. Surely that's punishment enough for everything I've done. I thought that what I did would help Brett so he could grow up in a wealthy family. But turns out all I did was hurt the people around me, especially Brett." Can you guess what I did next? I went to meet my parents and asked them to remove all accusations against Ashley. You're probably wondering why I changed my tune so quickly. Well, I felt like enough revenge had already happened, and I couldn't bear anyone suffering anymore. All I'd ever wanted was to have a peaceful life, and revenge only satisfies us for a second. It doesn't make us happy in the long term. After that, Ashley came to apologize to my parents, and swore she'd completely disappear from our life after that. Then she gave us Brett's grandparents' address, and asked us not to put any blame on Brett. Then she left. Poor Brett. When I went to meet him, it was clear he was the one who'd been hurt most by all of this. His grandparents told me that after Ashley had revealed the truth to him, he'd lock himself up in his room and hadn't come out. I knocked on his door and begged him to let me in. After a while, he opened the door, and I couldn't believe how he looked. He'd become so skinny, and his eyes were so sad. It made me so upset to see him like this. He said to me that he blamed himself for everything. For the big lie my life had been, for my parents' loss of their only child, and for the way we'd broken up. He truly believed all of this was because of him and his mom. I hugged him and told him none of this was his fault, and I asked him to come back to my parents' house because we all missed him so much. He eventually agreed, but I could see he was nervous, especially when both my parents knew that Brett wasn't related to them by blood. But my parents welcomed him back into the house. However, I could see they were feeling a bit awkward about what to say, so I stood up and said to them, even though you guys aren't actually related, you've still been so happy together. Just like my adoptive mom, she ended up getting a daughter she might never have had, and you got a son that brought you so much joy. Sure, there were lots of lies, but we were still happy, right? Believe it or not, everything worked out after that. Brett and I went back to school, and we've both decided to go work at my parents' company after graduation. I have chosen to move in with my parents, but of course, I still visit my adoptive mom and aunt all the time. My adoptive mom understands that this is important for me, so that I can get to know my parents properly and catch up on lost time. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I asked my parents to forgive my adoptive mom and aunt, because even though they acted wrongly in the past, they still raised me and did such an amazing job. As for Brett, he moved out into his own place, but still visits my parents all the time. However, Brett and I are no longer dating. It wasn't because of my parents, though. Let's be honest, it would just be too weird if we kept dating after everything we'd been through. It was a hard decision for us both, but it's for the best. We both need to move on so that we can have a better future. And hey, at least we can still be— Hi, I'm Diane, and I'm 20 years old. I fell in love on the first day of college. I'm not even joking. I'd promised my mom I'd focus on my studies and wouldn't fall for any boys. But one look at Brett, and I broke that promise immediately. We had an instant connection, and pretty soon we were spending every waking moment together. I can't help but think that if I hadn't met him, maybe I'd never have found out the dark secret my mom and aunt had been hiding from me my whole life. You see, my mom raised me alone, and I had no idea who my dad was. Let's just say it seemed like my mom got around, so she really didn't want me to get into the same kind of situation as her. I decided to keep Brett a secret. She didn't need to know, right? When I went home for Christmas vacation, I missed Brett so much, but I couldn't let my mom know about him. So I'd wait until she went to bed before calling him. One night, she caught me, though. She must have gone to the bathroom, and suddenly I heard footsteps. She was standing right there. I didn't know how much she heard, but I was so embarrassed. I thought she'd grab the phone from me and tell me off, but instead, she just walked back to bed. It was so weird. In the morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table grinning and said, "Well, who is he then? Invite him over. Don't be shy." I couldn't believe it. I thought she'd freak out, but instead she wanted to meet him. She suggested we invited him over for dinner, as my aunt was also coming over that night. My mom and my aunt were like best friends and had basically raised me together, so I was excited for her to meet Brett too. He took the bus that afternoon, as he was desperate to see me, and my mom said he could stay in the spare room. As soon as my mom saw Brett, she grinned at me and whispered how handsome he was. Then we sat down to dinner and started chatting. My mom had so many questions for him, and it was a bit awkward. She wouldn't shut up, and it made her seem so nosy. She asked where he'd grown up and what his mom and dad did, and even asked for their names and stuff. Meanwhile, my aunt just sat there quietly, and then at one point she got up from the table and went out into the garden. My mom ran after her, and Brett looked at me worried. I had no idea what was wrong. 10 minutes later, my mom came in and her expression had totally changed. She went from being warm and friendly to totally strict and cold. She looked at both Brett and I and said she decided I was far too young to have a boyfriend staying over, and then asked Brett to leave. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was 20 years old. She was being so rude. So I said to her, "Mom, why? Please, can he just stay?" I was almost begging her, but she looked so serious and firm, and I knew she wasn't going to change her mind. Brett was even more shocked than me. I mean, it had been my mom who'd invited him in the first place, and now there she was, shooing him away. He quickly grabbed his stuff and ordered a taxi. I was so upset I didn't even say bye to him. I just burst into tears and felt so angry at my mom. Right after Brett left, I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room, and my mom stood on the other side begging to speak to me. She said there was something she needed to tell me. I refused to come out and instead sat on the floor on the other side of the door. I could hear my mom crying and knew this was serious. She said the reason she didn't want Brett to stay was because he was actually my half-brother. No, I didn't understand. I asked if my dad was also Brett's dad, and then I got angry. I thought my mom hadn't known who my dad was. I opened the door and I was about to start shouting at her when she told me what was really going on. I'd been adopted. Well, actually, I'd been kidnapped by my aunt when I was born. It's a long, shocking story, but basically my biological parents were this rich couple, but they were struggling to get pregnant. My biological mom had a best friend called Ashley, who she told everything to, but Ashley secretly had a crush on my dad. She seduced my dad until one night they slept together, and Ashley ended up getting pregnant. My dad was so happy and promised Ashley he'd help raise the baby, but that he couldn't divorce my mom. This made Ashley angry. She wanted my dad all to herself and wanted their kid to become the heir to his company. At the same time, my biological mom fell pregnant with me, and when my dad found out, he quickly forgot about Ashley and tried to forget about the mistake he'd made that one night. This, of course, made Ashley even more angry, but she still pretended to be friends with my mom. When my mom went into labor with me, my dad was away on a business trip, and Ashley paid someone to sneak into the hospital and kidnap me. That person turned out to be my aunt. She did it because she was desperate for cash, so she snuck in, dressed up as a nurse, and in the middle of the night stole me away. But she wasn't cold-blooded enough to just throw me away or leave me at an orphanage. So she took me to her sister's place and told her that she'd found me abandoned on the street. Her sister, who had never wanted to get married but had always wanted to be a mom, was so happy and decided to raise me. But then a few days later, it was all over the news, a missing baby. There was an exact description of what I'd been wearing, and even a photo of me just after I'd been born. There was no denying that I was the missing baby. My new mom confronted my aunt about it and found out the truth. My aunt said there was no way they could return me as my aunt had already spent all the money she'd been paid to cover some debts. And she didn't want to go to prison, so they decided to raise me as if I really was their own. That secret would still have been hidden from me if I hadn't brought Brett home. My mom was so shocked that I'd brought my dad and Ashley's son into her home and introduced him to her as my boyfriend. As my mom told me all of this, I just sat there frozen. This was absolutely unbelievable. I felt sick. They'd lied to me all these years, and even worse, my boyfriend was actually my half-brother. My whole life was one big mess. "I hate you, Mom, and I hate you too," I said to my aunt. "You helped that evil monster Ashley get what she wanted, and now you've ruined my life and taken away my family." My mom reached out to hug me, but I didn't want her near me. We both just sat there crying. She tried to calm me down and get me to relax. Then she sighed and said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Your whole life I've been trying to make it up to you. I thought my love for you would be enough. As for Ashley, well, I heard she didn't get what she wanted in the end." Wait, why? I don't understand. But she successfully kidnapped me, right? I wiped my tears and looked at her. Yes, sweetie, but her main goal was to become your dad's wife. But that obviously didn't happen. Then she continued. After my aunt had kidnapped me, Ashley had given birth to Brett, and was so happy thinking that my parents no longer had a baby, and that my dad would now leave my mom and go live with her. But that's not what happened. Yes, their dear daughter was taken away, but my dad still stayed with my mom and loved her even more. My dad didn't get together with Ashley, but apparently my dad had still been helping raise Brett until now. There's definitely no bad blood between them because I've heard Brett talk about his dad quite a lot. Now there was only one thing for it. I had to find my biological parents and find out the rest of the story. They deserved to know I was alive. But now, what would I do about Brett? I'd have to break up with.
Oh, I've never been in a negotiation that lasted this long before. I've been here since 3, and it's now 8. Worse still, I hadn't even mentioned the funding yet. I've tried, but it was Dane's fault. He kept on interrupting me and going off topic. As I looked at Dane, who was currently reenacting a soccer game with condiments, I wondered how on earth was he a part of the student council. He might have been a senior, but he was an average grade student who didn't seem to excel at anything. He also exaggerated everything and mainly just messed around. I should never have agreed with Dane to arrange the meeting here. Not only had I wasted 5 hours of my life, but it looked like the funding was a no deal. I couldn't take any more of this. Remind me never to listen to Dane, ever again. I grabbed my bag and was about to stand up when Mr. Johnson turned to me. Ruth, I love your idea. Funding all of it would be a bit of a stretch, but I can go to 80%. And if it becomes a yearly thing, I'll be happy to continue sponsoring it. I stared at him open-mouthed. Did I hear him right? Mr. Johnson, the owner of the local music shop, was actually agreeing to provide a big chunk of the funding for our student talent show? By the way, I like this Dane guy. Today's been fun. Dane wooed, "Yes, it's a dealio," and enthusiastically shook Mr. Johnson's hand. Wait, I was supposed to be the one to close the deal. Never mind. We had the funding. This was amazing. We did it! Dane punched the air. Hey, how did you? He gave a Cheshire cat grin as he replied, "Never expected that, did you? What do you think of me now, Ruth the new president?" I shrugged and laughed. Hey, how about a celebratory hug, huh? He lunged at me with open arms. Well, why not? This deserved a celebration after all. We were jumping up and down, and I don't know, maybe I was delirious from the stupidly long meeting or something. But the next thing I knew, we were kissing. OMG! We immediately pulled away from each other and awkwardly looked the other way. After that, he drove me home in silence. Oh no, what was I thinking? Why did I, or anyone breathing, do that? It was Dane. Dane! Can you believe it? Well, okay, I suppose it'd been a difficult couple of months for me. As soon as I became president of the student council, my boyfriend Walter didn't congratulate me. No, instead he broke up with me. We'd been together for 2 years, but recently he'd spoken about marriage and buying a house. Not yet. I want to focus on my career first. But I guess me applying to the students' council and being all busy bee with work frustrated him even more. Now, I tried to distract myself with studying and council work, but I felt like I was getting ever closer to the edge of a cliff, one with hungry sharks circling the bottom. Ugh! And then there were the rumors being spread around school about me. Ruth's just a freshman. She won't be able to hack the pressure. And Ruth's so serious and boring. So I started working harder and harder to prove myself. Hence the talent show project. Only, geez, I was so exhausted, both mentally and physically. This funding news was fantastic. But what was going on with Dane? Maybe he has some kind of secret power of attraction or something. Anyway, after that incident, he flooded me with calls and messages, even though I was crazy busy. After the 12th call in a row, I stopped writing my essay and answered with an annoyed, "What? Hey there, how are you feeling about the weather today? My name is Ruth, not there, and I don't care about the weather, I'm busy." Busy enough to correct my words like that? I don't think so. Ugh, fine. I agreed to go out for a quick coffee with him just so he'd stop bugging me. I stirred my spoon around my coffee as I glared at him and said, "Will you stop calling me? I need to study." He stuffed the majority of his muffin into his mouth and took ages to chew it. Then he wiped his mouth onto the back of his arm and said, "You do realize all the other council members call you Military Ruth, right? Try not to be so difficult and chillax once, will you?" Wow, that sucked. I didn't expect to be liked by everyone, but I was working my butt off for the council, so they could at least appreciate what I was doing for them. I cleared my throat. I don't care. Work is work. I didn't become the president to make friends. "But I know you're not like that," Dane continued. "You might be going through a tough time. Still, you're the most stunning person I've ever met." My face brightened up, even blushed. What did he just say? "You're beautiful, strong, and independent." He reached out and took my hand, and I tried to ignore the fact it was sticky from his muffin. Ew. "I must be the luckiest guy ever to date a girl like you, Ruth. Those other girls are just jealous of you. I mean, you have this hunk, and they don't." Hold up. He said what? Date? I gave him a disgusted, "Who do you think you are?" look. Reading my expression, his face dropped. "Oh, I, thought there was something between us." I froze for a few seconds. Was I being too harsh? I mean, he was totally sweet saying those words earlier. Fine. Listen carefully. I'll hang out with you. Not dating. But you have to promise, swear, that you'll never, ever tell anyone about it. I don't know. I mean, he was so immature and annoying, but I guess he was also kind of fun to be around. He made me laugh, and I liked that. All I did was work, work, work. And perhaps that was why Walter broke up with me, wasn't it? Maybe when I hang out with Dane, I should practice being less serious. One Sunday, when we were having brunch at a random cafe of his choice, I asked about his graduation coming up that summer and his plan. "Honestly, I haven't thought any further than finishing my freshman year," he said between chewing on his sandwich. "How about you?" he asked. "Well, I want to go to an Ivy League college for a master, of course, preferably Dartmouth, and study social science. Then I want to work for the government, but high up, like a managing role, and really make an impact, Dane shrugged after I finished. "Yeah, nice plan," and kept digging in his food. I felt weird. Was I being unrealistic? Or was it just Dane's point of view? But to have a happy relationship, maybe it's best to compromise and accept the differences, right? I snapped myself back into the now. If this whole thing with Dane hadn't happened, I would still be in anguish and despair. It was strange, but I did feel better around him, unlike with Walter. So I should respect his opinions. Gotta learn from my mistake, right? One day, I was at a council meeting planning a fundraiser for the remainder of the talent show money. I decided it was time people saw the real Dane, so I made him event organizer. But this didn't go down well. As in the other council members' eyes, Dane was a lazy, idiotic puppet. Give him a chance. He's the one who persuaded Mr. Johnson to fund the talent show. Please, we never know other people's limits and abilities. Then this girl, Catherine, sarcastically said, "Of course you'd know his ability since he's your boyfriend." You suck at leading. All you care about is your personal feelings. I know. I'll date you. Then I may actually get given a job I deserve. My tongue was tied. I couldn't find a word to defend myself. And at the same time, I was really, really mad at Dane. And worse still, he hadn't even bothered showing up for the meeting. Afterward, I went round to Dane's house and furiously banged on the door. Yelled at him the moment he opened it. "How come people know that we've been hanging out?" Dane silently scratched his head, eyes open wide, and stared awkwardly at some random spot. "Answer me!" I continued, but still no reply. I pointed my finger at his face. "I just went through a hurricane of rage in a meeting with the council to put you in charge of the fundraiser event. And you didn't even bother showing up. You better do an amazing job, else we'll both be dead." Then I stormed off. Over the next few days, the rumors continued to circulate about me. Clearly, Dane had been bragging to everyone that he'd managed to score himself a stiff girl like me, that I was no tigress, more like a lovely kitten. Now everyone was staring and laughing at me, and made meow sounds at me in the corridors. Someone even filled my seat in the council room with cat food. This was horrible to deal with, but instead of supporting me, Dane went rogue from school for a full week. He also didn't arrange the venue for the fundraiser, meaning we had to reschedule the event. I was left looking bad, so the teacher gave me a lecture on responsibility and strongly advised me to leave the student council. So that's what I did. Catherine's in charge now. After that, I couldn't face school, so I locked myself away in my room and cried as I thought back to all the things that had happened. First, Walter left me. Then everyone else on the council mocked me. Then I lost my position on the council I worked hard for because I put my trust in the wrong person. Ugh, Dane. What he did hurt the most, as he was exactly what others described him as, childish and insensitive. I was torn between never wanting to see him again and also missing him like crazy. Now I had no one. I felt so alone. Ugh, darn it. Loneliness sucked. So when he called me, I answered. He told me he was outside my house. I guess I should at least hear him out, right? "Hey, beautiful, listen." He grabbed my hand and looked straight into my eyes. "It doesn't matter, okay? The council, the president position, those people don't matter. The most important thing is you being happy, and I'm gonna make you happy." I wanted so much to believe his words. So I let him take me out. We ended up in this noisy restaurant with singing waiting staff. He found it hilarious, but I felt so uncomfortable. Then on the way back, he dragged me into this arcade and left me so he could go on the zombie killing game. As I watched him spin around then shoot, I realized how different we were. I guess I was holding on to him because I'd lost everything else. Who was I anymore? I felt like a stranger to myself. This wasn't me, and Dane wasn't right for me. He rushed over to me and excitingly clung onto my arm. "Ruth, come see my high score." I shook my head and quietly said, "It's over." I pulled my arm free and walked off. After that, I kept to myself, and at school, avoided Dane and my former council members as much as possible. It did hurt when I saw the posters for the talent show around the school, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I did receive a message from Dane saying something about his graduation party, but I skipped it. The truth is, he's just not good for me. Life was a joke to him, and as a result of this, he left me feeling like I was a joke too. I felt so lost. So I'm going to spend the summer with my grandparents out in the country, away from everyone and everything. I need time to heal, so when I come back, I'll be strong, confident, and independent girl I once was. As I really do miss that version of me. Each one of us needs to learn how to overcome things by ourselves, without relying on others, especially when these others in question aren't any good for us.
Really? You're from Korea? No way, you sound just like a native speaker.
Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. "Yeah, I'm 100% Korean," I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time I was 21, I joined an online English speaking club, where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day.
and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life, but still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his two best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life, I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay though. He was young and handsome and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh. Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said,
Sorry, Jenny. I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time.
I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said,
Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard.
OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message? The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet, and then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time, I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but
All I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now, maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel. And he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, there was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noticed someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying, "We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it." Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise." Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away. And ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience because I've never been happy.
Why do we have to study logarithms? Will they help us with stockbroking? Surely not. Why suddenly create the X and then force us to find it? And why do I have to prove that it's an isosceles triangle? I see clearly that it is. Duh! Then I received the note back saying, "What are you two talking about?" I just figured that another kid had intercepted it. So with my eyes still glued to my level 3692 of Candy Crush, I scrawled back, "Keep your nose out of my business," and then handed the paper over without looking. Ahem. But your business is taking place in my class. I slowly looked up and saw that it was my teacher. Oh, dang. Busted again. Looking over, I saw Brett with his big guilty face. Ugh, he should have been more careful. Okay, you. And you. Out! You're probably wondering how I'm such a pro at this pose. Well, it's because I've done it 1,000 times. And that serious woman over there is Mrs. Megan, my math teacher. I swear, she totally has it in for me. Okay, let me tell you the story. Once upon a time, there was a girl who, due to an unexpected accident with a trash can and an ill-placed skateboard, ended up arriving a teensy bit late for her exam. But the teacher refused to let her in, and also failed her. Grrr. Yeah, that girl was me, Lexi. Thus, from that moment forth, she became my arch enemy. So, during her boring lecture, I threw a paper plane at the board and said, "Miss, you've spelled arithmetic wrong. I suppose spelling is a bit hard for a numbers person like you. It's okay." Clearly my comment got to her, as during that same class, she picked on me to graph a function. Easy peasy. So I created a masterpiece that made her eyes roll, and the whole class found it hilarious. And as expected, she gave me a lengthy lecture on my childish behavior, and even threatened to call my parents. Poof! Yeah, good luck with that, as unless it involved business, then my parents were practically impossible to reach. Besides, I was just having a laugh. Mrs. Megan needed to lighten up. So I secretly stuck a piece of paper saying free hugs on her back. I lurked behind a tree and watched as all these people surrounded her. She looked so bewildered as she tried to navigate past them while having no idea what was going on. The good old days. Suddenly, Brett patted my shoulder and told me 30 minutes had passed and we needed to go back to class. My butt hadn't even touched my chair when I heard a patronizing voice say, "You shouldn't act like that." Ugh, that's Faye, the teacher's pet and a real pick-me girl. Every time the teacher asks a question, she wriggles her arm in the air and squeaks out, "Me, me!" Mrs. Megan only likes her because she always laughs at her boring jokes. Oh well, I may have no proof, but in my experience, Faye's definitely not as innocent as she looks. Don't say I'm jealous, 'cause I'm 100% not. You probably think I hate school, but it's still way better than my so-called home. Ugh. At least school could be amusing, while my home life consisted of mom and dad locked away in their office 24/7. I can't remember the last time either of them cooked dinner. So takeaway it is. So I'm texting Ben, my super sexy BF. He's been studying in France, and he's back today. I've missed him so much, but unfortunately, I couldn't pick him up from the airport because of, school. And tonight, he has a family party, but we're meeting up tomorrow. Yay! Let me see your face, sweetie. I miss you. You know what? Today, that teacher gave me detention again. Really? She messed with the wrong one, didn't she? Definitely. I will retaliate tomorrow. She'd better watch out. Okay, but don't end up in after-school detention, as I want to see you. My mom's also a teacher, but she's not that much. Oh, by the way, she's here. You want to say hello? Yeah, sure. Ben, it gets on my nerves whenever I think of that Before I had a chance to finish my words, a person popped up on the screen. Mrs. Megan! Lexi? OMG! We both gave each other stunned, open-mouthed stares. It looked like the screen had frozen. Literally. Then just when I didn't think it could get any worse, suddenly a familiar voice broke the silence. Oh, Ben has a girlfriend? Let me see her. Huh? That's Faye! Oh, my days. This is too much to process. My two enemies were in the same frame. Shocked, I ended the call. Right after, I received a text from Ben saying, "Don't worry, my mother may look super serious, but she's kind. And the girl is Faye, my neighbor. We've known each other since childhood, and she's cool." This was so crazy. Now I'd have to face them both every day knowing that they are associated with my BF. Oh, the future is as dark as night. And yeah, this is the beginning of the series thusly entitled Living with My Future Mother-in-Law and My BF's Annoying Female Best Friend. And since then, things at school turned weird. For our class Halloween event, which had a Toy Story theme, Mrs. Megan was in charge of handing out the parts. Faye was Bo Peep, and she had this really cute outfit. While me, I was stuck as Mrs. Potato Head. My outfit was so lame, and one of my googly eyes kept on falling off. Ugh! It was so embarrassing. But I couldn't say anything. I couldn't mess with her anymore, as I still wanted to be with her son. Ugh. Worse still, math class became an endurance test. I was so sick of being compared to that goody two-shoes Faye. Lexi, if you spent more time studying and less time painting your nails, you'd be a top student like Faye. Poof! Faye caught on to what was going on and also started playing tricks on me. One time in class, when I was dozing and Mrs. Megan was correcting the homework, I overheard, "This symbol shows that A is not equal to B." Faye then turned around and whispered, "Just like you, you're not equal to me. And you don't deserve my Ben either." What? Ben is mine, not hers. I bared my teeth and was about to say something when that brat started pretending to cry, saying that I was picking on her. Out! Mrs. Megan came to us with burning eyes. We were walking out when in a sympathetic tone she added, "Faye, you stay." I returned to my meditating pose, but I couldn't shake off my anger. How unfair! Later, when it was lunchtime, Faye walked over to me with a cup of Coke, saying it was a peace offering, and that she was sorry for earlier. This was confusing, but whatever. I took it and was about to take a sip when Brett rushed over waving his arms about. "Lexi, stop!" I saw Faye put soy sauce in it. I was just a second away from yelling at her when Mrs. Megan appeared. I smiled smugly, thinking Faye would finally get into trouble. But to my surprise, Mrs. Megan took a sip of the drink and tried to keep a neutral face as she replied, "There's nothing wrong with it." Really? They went that far to cover up for each other? Whatever. I had a date with Ben tonight to prepare for anyway. That night as planned, I arrived at Ben's house with a somewhat wilting pot plant for Mrs. Megan. I was kinda excited to finally have a cooked meal. Only, when I walked into the kitchen, I couldn't smell anything cooking. Mrs. Megan appeared and rubbing her hand said, "Lexi, you don't mind cooking, do you? It's just been a long week of drawing diagrams. My hand kinda aches." Seeing the situation, Ben immediately came to help, but she reminded him that he'd agreed to fix a pipe or something. To be honest, I'd never touched a frying pan before. But I mean, how hard could it be? I'd make pancakes, though it's not really suitable for dinner, but I'd seen them on a 5-minute crafts and they were clearly a breeze to make. Only, it didn't go to plan. In situations like this, it's important not to panic. But, yeah, I panicked. I needed a plan B. Quick! In a rush, I threw away all the evidence of the failed pancakes and ordered food online. After all, thanks to my workaholic parents, this was my forte. I instructed the delivery person to come to the back door, so Ben and Mrs. Megan would be none the wiser. Expectedly, at the very first bite, Ben and my mother-in-law praised me profusely for my food, and Ben even joked that I should join the next season of Master Chef. Yo, I will rate this restaurant 5 stars for sure. Mrs. Megan suddenly dropped her spoon, so I quickly bent down to pick it up, only she leaned down and whispered sarcastically, "I order from Sydney's too. Their sauces are divine." Oh, busted! Then, halfway through the night, this man showed up and apologized for being late. Turns out he was Jim, Faye's father, but Faye wasn't coming over as she was out with friends. Happy days! I watched Mrs. Megan and him touch a tissue box at the same time by mistake, and then blushed? Huh? Oh, I get it. She liked him. Now it made sense why she was always sucking up to Faye. Have you thought about remarrying? I asked Jim innocently. To the waiting eyes of me, as well as Mrs. Megan, he hesitantly answered, I don't think Faye would like that. Mrs. Megan glumly stared down at the floor. Okay, so I actually felt kinda sorry for her. Besides, matchmaking has always been my hobby, so I decided to help her. I knew that Faye was at a party on Saturday night, so I decided this was the perfect opportunity to play Cupid. I told Mrs. Megan that Jim had something to tell her, so meet him at the Golden Reef restaurant at 7 p.m. Then I told Jim the same. I stood behind a column and watched them share their starter, and then give each other gooey-eyed glances. Then Jim reached out and took Mrs. Megan's hand. They were looking at each other passionately when Faye suddenly rushed in from nowhere and angrily slammed her bag on the table. So this is it? My teacher and my dad? For real?
Faye, why are you here?
Jim stuttered. No one can ever replace Mom! Then she turned to a dumbfounded-looking Mrs. Megan. Turns out you were only being nice to me to get my dad. You're fake. Stay away from us. Mrs. Megan covered her face with her hands, then quickly left. Geez, Faye was brutal. And however annoying Mrs. Megan was, she didn't deserve that. You! Faye shouted. Uh-oh. Her gaze fixed on me. It figures you'd be behind this. Keep your big nose out of our family business and start caring about yours instead. Guess this is what lack of parental care does to a kid. I stared at her speechless. Those words should have driven me mad, but for some reason, I only felt sad and so guilty. I really just meant well. So, first thing at school the next day, I swallowed my pride and went to Mrs. Megan's classroom, where she looked lost in thought as she marked homework. I coughed to clear my throat, then said, Miss, I'm sorry. I honestly was trying to help, but now I realize I should have minded my own business. I'm also sorry for being a jerk in your class. She was silent at first, then replied, It's okay, as I've come to realize that you and I aren't so different. We both have complications in the way of finding love. Guess it's really not easy to get approval from your parents' family, huh? She smiled and gently stroked my hair before continuing. You're such a smart and kind girl, and I always knew you could do better in class, that I must have been too harsh on you. I'm sorry, too. I smiled back at her, and at that moment, I felt like all of our previous conflicts melted away. And I realized that I shouldn't neglect my studies. Instead, I should work hard to become the best version of myself. So, with a lot of hard work, I went from trailing at the bottom of the class to reaching the top spot, even overtaking Faye. Ha! Speaking of Faye, she was still ignoring both me and Mrs. Megan, and never put her hand up in class anymore. But then a rainbow flame experience in the chem lab changed things. Everyone ran out of there when the curtain caught on fire, except for a terrified Faye. Luckily, Mrs. Megan rushed inside to rescue her just in time, and covered her with a jacket as she led her to safety. After that, Faye realized that Mrs. Megan is a good person who cares about both her and Jim. So, through blurry eyes, Faye sobbed out, Thank you so much, and sorry, I was too childish. Please forgive me. A few months later. So, yeah, you see, my wing woman plan worked. And now I have a second family, a really big one. But you know what's the best thing? That is, I no longer have to order food online anymore, 'cause I will stick to here, and my mother-in-law will cook for me. I can't believe it's been a year since Gerald passed away. I know it's been hard, but on the bright side, at least you still have your 2 wonderful daughters. Thank you. She smiled. Then she rubbed Jamie's head. I'm very proud of this one. Yeah. Jamie's pretty, Jamie's girly, Jamie's adorable. And I was just the other child. I watched on as the 3 of them relaxed on the porch, giggling about dumb stuff and enjoying their lemonade, while I struggled with the stupid lawnmower. They didn't even notice me. I quickly finished up, then I grabbed my skateboard and hurried out of there. Charlotte, stop right there. And where exactly do you think you're going without my permission? Skateboarding. I grumbled, then left. Whatever. She didn't care anyway. She just wanted to suffocate me. It wasn't like this back when I had Dad on my side. As you can see, I'm not a girly girl. All that manicure and makeup stuff just seems like nonsense to me. But my non-identical twin, Jamie, lives for it. She always wakes up extra early just so she has more time to style her hair, apply her makeup, and pick out her daily outfit. Then all she does at school is sit around with the other Barbies and giggle at pretty much everything. But guess that's the kind of girl Mom prefers, as it's blatantly clear that Jamie's her favorite. It's always me who had to do all the chores in the house, just so her Jamie could sit there scrolling through her phone. There was one time when I was washing the dishes, I heard a deafening shriek. No, my sister wasn't being murdered. Instead, there was a spider crawling across the floor. Poof! It was just a spider. Nuts! I didn't want to be a chore slave. I just wanted to skateboard. Yeah, skateboarding and painting are my true passions, but Mom told me skateboarding was for boys. Ugh, how ridiculous. So I often snuck out. There were times I got so into it that I lost track of time and arrived home to Mom's furious eyes. You're grounded. Next time, I won't hesitate in breaking your boards in half. Jeez, that was so unfair. I pushed past her and ran into my room. Then clutching my board, I burst into tears. I wish Dad was still here. Whenever Mom and I argued, he always came up to my room and told me how Mom only acted the way she did because she cares about me. She just has a different way of showing it. It's been a whole year since he passed, all because of a freak accident at the factory he worked in. Now, we all had to rely on Mom's home tailor job, and I just became the errand girl, while Jamie sits around looking pretty? Worse still, Mom insisted I get a part-time job to support the family, while Jamie didn't have to. When I questioned Mom on this, she just said, Jamie isn't like you. She wouldn't be able to handle both school and work. Excuse me, what? But I knew arguing with Mom about it was pointless. Anyways, it all worked out okay as I landed myself a job in this cool skateboard store. Oh, and also, less house chores. One rainy afternoon, the store was quiet, so I took out my sketchbook and designed some skateboards. Then my manager, Rick, peered over my shoulder. Uh-oh, was I in trouble? But to my surprise, he said, That's pretty good. Then he passed me a flyer for a skateboard designing contest. You should give it a try. This contest was meant to be, so I spent all my free time shut away in my room working on my design. I didn't see Mom or Jamie for a full week. How peaceful. And guess what? I won first prize. It was awesome. However, Mom snatched the prize money from me due to family financial reasons. So my money was going to be used on new clothes and makeup for Jamie. Unbelievable! I didn't want to be under this roof anymore. But at 15, where else could I go? Poof. Then Mom told me her work was slow at the moment, so I should enter more contests to support my family. Hey, it got me out of chores, so I agreed to it. And I pretty much won all of them. But it did annoy me that I didn't get to keep my rewards. Then when I saw Jamie showing off her new shoes, I just wanted to yank them off her feet and throw them at her. Ugh! I thought twins were meant to have some sort of deep connection or something. Not me and Jamie. We couldn't be more different. Finally, I had a day off, so I arranged to go skateboarding with Rick. I grabbed my board and was about to leave when Mom blocked the door. Charlotte, where do you think you're going? Jamie has a date tomorrow, and her dress needs hand washing. What? This was ridiculous. I rolled my eyes and said, in that case, she can wash it herself. Don't take that attitude with me, young lady. You'll do as you're told. Through angry sobs, I screamed at her. I wish you weren't my mom! Then I ran upstairs to my room. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom calmed down, cleared her throat, and opened the door. Huh? Why was there an expensive-looking car in our driveway? And why was a wealthy-looking couple standing on the doorstep? Curious, I hid behind the wall to see who they were and what they were here for. From my eavesdropping, I found out that the couple was the Barnes. They'd just retired from their jobs working for the government in the Secret Intelligence Department. Mom and Mrs. Barnes were besties in high school, so when they both fell pregnant at the same time, Mom offered to bring their daughter up as her own, so they could go and work away on their secret mission. We've both taken early retirement, and we can finally enjoy life. We're very grateful to both you and Gerald for looking after our daughter, but we're here to take her home now. Oh my God! Turns out, one of us was adopted! No wonder we were nothing alike. But was it Jamie or me? Could it be me? I mean, Mom always preferred Jamie, so she could be her biological daughter. I knew they were my real parents. I could feel it. So taking a deep breath, I nervously stepped out to meet them. Jamie, come down here, sweetie. Mom called, and I froze on the spot. I watched on as Jamie appeared, and Mom introduced her to her real parents. She didn't even seem surprised. She just replied, Yes, I know. Then sweetly grinned. I'm so happy that I can finally meet you both. The Barnes cooed over Jamie like she was a puppy or something. Then they got emotional and all. Ugh, it made me want to puke. I ran up to my room, locked the door, and cried. Life was so unfair. Jamie was always the lucky one, while I always got the raw deal out of things. I must have cried myself to sleep, as when I woke up, it was morning. I reached for my phone. Jamie had messaged me. It's sad you missed my farewell dinner. I had a great time living with you. Come and hang out sometime, okay? Poof! I aggressively threw my phone down onto my bed. Bold of her to assume I would ever want to hang out with her. We had nothing in common. Luck alone was an example. Life went on, but without Jamie, as she moved to some rich kid's school. And I continued going to school, work, sneaking out to skateboard, and avoiding Mom as much as possible. Then one chemistry class, while we were carrying out an experiment in the lab, one of my classmates made a mistake. And boom! We were all left looking like Cinderella. And that might have actually been the best thing of that day, since we were dismissed 2 hours early. Excited, I rushed home to get my skateboard, but I knew I needed to sneak past Mom so she didn't accuse me of skipping class. But as I passed the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the table sobbing to herself. What was going on? Suddenly, she stood up and walked out to the backyard. There was a leather notebook and a pen on the kitchen table, so I tiptoed over and took a peek. It looked like her diary. Those freshly written lines were stained with tears. Jamie, my baby, I miss you terribly. I want you to live a wealthy, happy life. So I made the ultimate sacrifice. I tell myself every day that you're now a Barnes, not a Smith anymore. Not my daughter anymore. What? I couldn't trust my own eyes. What did these words mean? Could it be... But even if she mistreats me sometimes, she couldn't be that kind of person, right? I tore out that page, then hurried off to the skate park. Only I couldn't concentrate. It was so bad, I messed up my pop shove-it and landed on my butt. Ugh, this was driving me insane. That evening, Mom appeared in my doorway and asked, Charlotte, what did you do this afternoon? I answered, I told you already. I was at school and then the skate park. Did you see my notebook? The leather one? I shook my head in response. Oh, it's my expense book. I can't remember where I left it. She gave another scan around my room before leaving. When she was out of sight, I immediately pulled out my phone and texted Jamie. Jamie, I miss you a lot. can I come over to your house tomorrow? I needed to see Mr. and Mrs. Barnes. I had to find out what was going on once and for all. Jamie replied she had a date the next day. While I was typing out a reply, she sent me another message. We can't hang out. Please stop contacting me. Okay, that was weird. Did she sense something was up? I checked Jamie's social network profile and noted down the name of her new school. The next morning, I skipped class, went straight to Jamie's school administrator's office to ask for the Barnes' address. Oh, and of course, I made up a convincing story. Jamie's my sister, but then we found out she's actually the Barnes' biological daughter. Now my mom, who raised Jamie all these years, is really sick, and I need to tell her, but I don't know how to reach her. Perfect! She handed me the address and even wished me luck. There was no point wasting time, so I skated my way round to the Barneses. As I rang on their doorbell, I could feel my heart somersaulting in my chest. I introduced myself as soon as they answered the door. Hey, I'm Charlotte, Mrs. Smith's daughter, but I strongly believe I'm not Charlotte Smith because I have something to show you. Then I handed them the torn page from my mom's diary. They both turned ghostly pale, and Mr. Barnes even had to grip onto the door frame to steady himself. I felt bad for putting them through this. I mean, what if I was wrong? So I suggested, let's just do a DNA test to be sure. A few days later, the Barnes turned up at our house with Jamie. They slammed 2 DNA test results down in front of Mom. I peered down at them. Whoa! Turns out I really am the Barnes' biological daughter after all. Mom gave this expressionless look, but then in a quiet voice she said, I just wanted Jamie to have a wealthy and privileged life. She's not as strong as Charlotte. She needs this more. Please don't blame her. She didn't know anything about this. Then she hugged Jamie and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked overwhelmed. Finally, Mr. Barnes managed to find the words to say, Jamie's also like a daughter to us now. We will take care of her like you did with our daughter, but just stay away from us. He pulled Jamie away from Mom and guided her out of the house. Mrs. Barnes hugged me as she started crying. I found myself doing the same. This was my real mom holding me. Whoa, this was so crazy. I packed my things, but as I was leaving, my old mom called me back. Charlotte, I have something to give to you. Then she handed me a small box full of cash. This is your prize money. I put it away for your college fund. You better have it back. I'm so sorry. My sight blurred with tears. Dad was right. She still cared for me. My parents will forgive you. Then you'll soon see both of us again, I said as I hugged her tightly. Then I turned and left. A new life was waiting ahead of me. In part 1 of my story, I met my doppelganger, Tracy, who just so happened to be from a super wealthy, royal blood kind of family. We made a deal where I became her stunt double to stand in for her at boring royal parties, so she could freely be with the love of her life that her family didn't approve of. It's just like a part-time job, which helped me earn some extra money to pursue my dream of being a singer. But then one time, Tracy came over and asked me to move into her mansion and play this princess act for an entire month while she's off to Asia with her boyfriend. That would need some serious thinking. How was I supposed to keep this up 24/7? I could already see myself getting so busted. Sensing my hesitation, Tracy pleaded again. Please, I'll give you whatever you want. This would mean so much for me and Arnold. You can do it, Kathy. We believe in you. She looked at me with those big puppy eyes. Oh no, what to do? At that exact moment, my mother walked out from the kitchen and said, You've been doing a great job so far, sweetie. I'm sure you'll pull it off this time too. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Well, I couldn't say no now, so I gave Tracy a nod, which made her scream with happiness. Yay! You've made my day! Tomorrow, 3 p.m.,
I'll be waiting for you." Then she grinned at my mother. "Thank you, Mrs. Mill." And so I moved in the next day. It was just me, and Tracy's dad lived in this marvelous mansion. Yeah, as well as their butler and some dozens of housekeepers. You get the picture. Luckily, Tracy's dad was rarely home, so I basically had the place to myself. It was bliss. I didn't have to lift a finger. If I wanted a glass of wine, I just rang the bell and a glass would be waiting before I even put the bell down. One day, I felt like Mexican food, and they actually flew one of the top Mexican chefs in just to make me a burrito. I could seriously get used to this whole royal blood thing. However, there were a few moments where I totally messed up. One time, Tracy's dad had a day off, so we ate dinner together. I was so nervous that I totally forgot that Tracy was left-handed, and her dad noticed right away. "Sweet pea, since when are you eating with your right hand?" I stammered, trying to make something up. I've recently seen some research saying I should start using my right hand to train the left side of my brain too. Just experimenting, Dad." Oof, that was close. But it didn't stop there. Doris, the housekeeper, came into my room one day and joked, "Tracy, when did you become so tidy? If I didn't know better, I'd say you had been replaced by a secret twin sister or something." I totally froze, trying not to let Doris know that she had just hit the nail on the head. I laughed it off. "Oh, Doris, don't be so silly. It's me. Check my birthmark." I was kind of bored and just thought I could clean it up a little bit. But it's even more boring. Ugh. "It's all yours now." I passed her my unfolded blanket and swiftly left the room. Each close call like that reminded me to be more careful. But other than that, my new life was full of wonderful things. Especially when I had Thomas by my side. At first I tried to act as cold as possible towards him, just like how Tracy would normally treat this fiancé of hers. But tell me, how am I supposed to ignore such a perfect man? He often came to visit me or took me to places. He always gave me all these butterflies with his charm and elegant gestures, and it wasn't long before I realized I had feelings for him. I just couldn't help it. He made me so happy. One night, instead of having some fancy 8-course dinner date, I suggested we try something more casual. So we went bowling and grabbed some burgers. We had so much fun, and at one point, he took my hand and said, "Thank you for opening your heart to me and giving me a chance to be your man," as he put a soda can ring on my finger. Come on, who wouldn't melt to that? And when he dropped me home, he leaned over to kiss me. Oh my God! My heart was thumping in my chest as I got out of the car. Then he said, "Good night, my darling Tracy." Suddenly, reality came crashing down. I had been delusional. It was Tracy that Thomas loved, not me, not poor old Kathy. But it's too late now. I'd been so carried away with my own feelings that I didn't realize how my behaviors towards Thomas had been taken as a green light. Both families were super stoked that Tracy finally showed some positive signals towards this relationship, and they started planning the wedding right away. The date was set for 2 weeks later. Then the plan was for us to move to Singapore for Thomas's work. I was so shocked at how fast everything was moving. This was a disaster. I called Tracy and told her everything. She also freaked out and told me to stay calm and just wait for her. She'd get back before the wedding day to stop it. Well, the wedding day was fast approaching, and there was still no sign of Tracy. I was really panicking now. And the worst part was that I couldn't get a hold of her. Her phone was off. I didn't know what to do. I cried to my mom over the phone, so she tried to calm me down. "Honey, I think if you leave now, you'll mess everything up. If Tracy's family finds out, you'll both be in trouble. Hang on a bit more. I'm sure she'll be back and everything will be okay." "But that means I have to go through with the wedding and then move to Singapore with him. I can't do that, Mom." "Why not, sweetie? I know you love him, and so far no one has spotted a difference between the two of you. Just keep pretending for now, okay?" So that's what I did. I kept pretending. While everyone prepared for the wedding of the year, I paced back and forth waiting for Tracy to get back. One day I was out in the garden trying to ease my mind when someone approached me. He looked so familiar, and I wondered if it was Arnold, Tracy's boyfriend. But what was he doing here? He asked me to follow him so that no one would see us, and then he seemed angry and said, "Tracy, why didn't you tell me you were back? I was so worried when you disappeared like that." Huh? Wasn't Tracy supposed to be with him? Arnold, calm down. I'm not Tracy. I'm Kathy. But Tracy has disappeared? I haven't been able to contact her either, and I've been worried sick. Oh, hey, Kathy. Gosh, you two are identical. Arnold looked disappointed. Anyway, we came back a few days ago, and she wanted to swing by your mum's place to give us some presents. Then I haven't seen her since. That's weird. My mum would have mentioned if she swung by. Yeah, I've asked her, but she hadn't seen Tracy either. Kathy, we need to find her. So I immediately canceled my wedding dress fitting and went with Arnold to my house. Hey, Mum, it's me. I called out, but there was no answer. We searched the house, but couldn't find her anywhere. Then, as we passed my room, I could hear someone inside, and the door was locked. That was so odd. So I rushed to get the spare key to open it, and got the fright of my life. Tracy was sitting on my bed. I almost screamed. What are you doing here? Tracy looked as shocked to see us as we were to see her. I don't know why your mom locked me in here, but don't worry. She didn't hurt me. I'm being fed well and I have Netflix, so it's not all bad. No way. My mom would never do such things. She was the sweetest woman, and this was so out of character. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. It was my mom. I screamed. Mom, could you please explain? What's going on here? She looked at me and stammered. I just planned to keep her here for a few days, just until you married Thomas and flown to Singapore with him. Are you insane? Do you want me to steal her life? No, sweetie, it's not stealing. It should have been your life. I mean, why didn't he recognize his own daughter? At this, she burst into tears and fell to the floor. Arnold rushed over and helped her up and said, "What do you mean, his own daughter?" And that's when my mum told me that Tracy is actually my half-sister. What? So Tracy's dad was my dad too? Turns out, when my mum had fallen pregnant with me, Tracy's dad's family hadn't approved because my mum was just a normal person. So they'd paid her to move to another city and stay away from Dad. But what's even worse is that my dad didn't even try and look for us after that. In fact, a few months later, he'd already married Tracy's mom, who came from a rich family. Both Tracy and I stood there completely shocked. No wonder we looked so similar. So, you're my sister? I gasped, staring at Tracy with wide eyes. Really? Dad did that? What a selfish, arrogant man! I'm ashamed to even be related to him. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. The truth needs to be told. No, Tracy, wait. Don't do that. My mom yelled. Sorry, but I have to. I can't play this game anymore. I have a plan. At that, Tracy walked off and Arnold ran after her. Here we go, I thought. And eventually, the wedding day of Thomas and Tracy rolled around. Me, my mum, and Arnold showed up in disguise. When the vicar asked them both to say "I do," Thomas said it immediately. But Tracy paused. The whole church held their breath waiting for her "I do," but it never came. Instead, she said, "I can't do this, Thomas. I'm sorry." That's when Arnold appeared, and Tracy ran towards him and held his hand. This man, he is the true love of my life. Of course, Tracy's dad was furious. He got up from his seat and yelled in front of everyone, "What on earth is going on?" And that's the moment when I felt so proud of Tracy. She said, "I don't love Thomas, Dad, and he deserves to be with someone who truly loves him back. That's what marriage is about, right? It should be based on love, not status or money. And anyway, I don't want to hurt someone the way you did.
What are you talking about? Who did I hurt?
He looked stunned. My mom, Kathy's mom, and Kathy herself, too. Tracy pointed over at me and my mom. Everyone in the church gasped as they looked from Tracy to me and back again. We really were identical. He looked like he was going to faint when he saw my mom. And then with a shaking hand, he pointed to me and said,
"And who is this?"
My mom walked towards him and said,
"This is Kathy, your daughter, the one you abandoned."
Wow, I didn't think my mom had it in her. Honestly, the tension in the air was crazy. People started whispering and shuffling in their seats. That was when Thomas said,
"So, which one of you is Tracy?"
I decided this was my moment to speak up. I'm not Tracy. I'm Kathy. I've been taking her place during the past month. I'm so sorry for lying to you this whole time. I couldn't even look him in the eyes as I put in his hand the soda ring that meant so much to me. Thomas looked disappointed and marched off. I ran after, trying to stop him, but he didn't care. Only, when I tripped and fell to the ground, he turned around to say,
"Why would you do this? Giving me false hope? And for what? Honestly, it would have been better if you'd treated me the way Tracy the Ice Queen does."
I'm sorry, Thomas. I didn't want to hurt you. My feelings for you are real. I started to cry.
"You're so selfish, Tracy. Oh no, wait. I mean, Kathy."
Then he walked off. In the end, the wedding was obviously canceled. Tracy's dad, or should I say, our dad, had no choice but to accept Tracy and Arnold's relationship. I was so happy for her. Dad, of course, also apologized to me and Mom, and even offered me to come and live with them. But I refused. I wasn't about to leave my mom. However, I did accept his offer to pay for my vocal training. At least I could live this dream of mine. Because I doubted I could make my other dream come true. My dream to see Thomas again. I was heartbroken. Still, I had to get on with life. Maybe I'd meet someone else. Pretty soon, it was time to graduate from my first semester of vocal training, and I was going to have my first ever solo performance to an audience. I was so nervous, but I sang with all my heart, and afterwards, as I left the theater, someone ran up to me with a giant bouquet of flowers. Unbelievable! It was Thomas! I burst into tears and he said,
"Hi, Kathy. I'm Thomas. Nice to meet you."
That put the widest smile on my face. I then ran into his arms saying, "It feels so good to hear you call me by my real name." "Yes, I'm Kathy. I know we just met, but will you be my boyfriend?" And you guessed it. The rest is now history. We're currently planning our wedding. For real this time. And I've honestly never been happier.